Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a great night. Tonight, we're here with Bryan of Flower Street Farm, and he is a beekeeper in Colorado running about 50 colonies. He's got several years' experience in a pretty harsh climate in the Rockies. And how about you tell us a little bit about yourself, Bryan?
Hi, Rainier. First of all, thanks for having me. Got to meet you at the Bee Expo formally, just briefly in January. So thanks for inviting me on. Yeah, we live out here in Lakewood, Colorado, which is a suburb of the Denver metro area. Um, Colorado has the Rocky Mountains, and we're not quite in the Rocky
No?
Mountains.
Okay.
We live right on the edge of the Rockies.
Okay.
So as you travel west across the country, the plain slowly gains in elevation till it gets to the edge of the Rockies. So we're at about 5,600 feet. I can drive 40 minutes west and be at the Continental Divide. So that's how close we are to the Rocky Mountains. If you were to divide Colorado up into thirds, like vertically, let me see if I can do it on my screen. This third I like to call like the Kansas part of Colorado, where it's that flat plains, right? Once you cross the border, it's still flat plains. Then you get to kind of the middle third, which is like the Rocky Mountains. And then you get to the right third, which is more like Utah, that arid desert type climate. And that's a rough generalization, but if you were to break it into those three parts, and we live right on the edge of the plains and the Rocky Mountains. So I don't know if you've ever heard of Red Rocks Amphitheater, right? That outdoor concert place. That's like 5 minutes from our house, right on the edge of the Rocky Mountains. We have a very dry climate. We don't have much moisture. So that's one of our challenges, being right on the edge of that high plains desert. We do get a lot of snow from the Rocky Mountains, but like when you see on the Weather Channel all the snow in Colorado, that's usually snow in the mountains. That's not as much down by Denver. We still get
Yeah.
snow a lot in the mountains, but we still have periods of time in the winter where it'll be mid 40s, sometimes upper 50s, and like maybe even a 60 day in January. So we get this snow and it melts. We get this snow and it melts. I grew up in New Jersey. When it snowed in the beginning of the winter, it stayed and it turned like brown gray all winter long, right? That's not what it does here in the West. It snows and it melts, it snows and it melts. So we do have that benefit in the winter of not having our bees locked in the entire winter long. So they do get good periods to get out and fly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So even though we do get cold spurts, we'll get some of those Arctic blasts where we get into the negative digits for a couple of days at a time. So we have to prepare for that kind of stuff. But that's not the entire winter, right? That's like a blast, 3 4 days, and then it's gone and it's back into the 30s and 40s. So I would say roughly that's a general description of our climate. Super dry, not great forage, not great honey flow. One of the benefits of that is no hive beetles, because our ground is so dry they just can't reproduce. Yeah, so it is a bit of a trade-off. What else can I answer about our environment of growing bees that I didn't hit?
Like, when does your first pollen come in?
Oh yeah, actually, there were reports like 2 or 3 days ago. People were seeing that dusty tan kind of pollen. That's usually our first silver maples. We do have a lot of maples here in the Denver area, so you get that early pollen, and they'll be hitting our chicken feed as well. We have chickens and ducks, so that's another indicator for us that they start brooding up in the late winter. So it just started. Now our nectar flow, roughly around mid-April is when it turns on really hard. So from here until then, we have to make sure that they're not going through all their sugar stores. So one of my big spring management tasks coming up now is just making sure colonies, as they start growing, don't starve themselves to death from their needs from that growing brood chamber.
Yeah, that's way earlier. Like my preconceived notions would be that Colorado would be colder than Maine, but and I'm not even in the coldest part of Maine, not even close. And yet
Yeah.
our first pollen, I think it's typically the crocuses, and that would be the third week of March.
Okay.
Do you have any crocuses on your property?
Yeah, it's not a major source of bloom though. Like
Do they bloom? But do they bloom before the maples or after? Because I don't have any maples on my property.
after.
After maples, so maybe we get
Yep.
first pollen probably mid March then. But
Yeah.
we don't get our nectar flow in Maine till like really going till at least mid May, and our prime flow isn't
Wow.
till June, typically like the first or second week of June.
Do you get two flows or one major flow?
It's very inconsistent. So we get some nectar depending on how the weather. So, like we can get a pretty good amount of nectar from mid May to mid June, but like
Okay.
our prime best honey of the year comes in late June to like the first week of July. So like 2 or 3 week period. That's where we get like our massive, like the most weight in the shortest period of time. Yeah.
Gotcha. Hi, James.
Yeah. Hi, James. You got DC here too. Yeah.
Nice. Hi,
It's
DC.
yeah. We there's a couple people that tune in every week, and we all have a good time. Just to make sure everybody knows, just go ahead and ask Bryan or I any questions you have in the chat. We'd love to hear from you, how everything's going with your spring, and what your plans are for this year. So you said you have kind of a long, drawn out spring-ish winter period. That's your maybe toughest part of your management.
That's what's coming up for sure. We run about 50 colonies ish. I don't worry about exact numbers. We took a
Yeah.
couple of losses in the fall. I like to, I like to take some losses in the fall if there's any colonies that I don't think are going to be worth trying to kind of nurse through the winter. I think I had 2 or 3 that since then I found dead out. I do my oxalic over the winter. I do 2 treatments. I do one around Thanksgiving and then another around the solstice. So that's part of my mite management system. We run about 50 colonies. We live here in suburbia, so not all of our colonies are on our property. We've got like a couple here, a couple there. We've got a couple accounts where I manage colonies for other people. Our largest bee yard right now has 10 colonies, but it has the potential to have 20 on the site to our largest bee yard that has 2. And I'm trying to get rid of the ones that have just a couple of colonies to reduce my driving time.
Absolutely. How far are your apiaries apart from each other and from your house?
Most of them are fairly close, but that one that's
Yeah.
the largest is a little bit farther. That's part of a contract I have with the solar farm. So I got a contract to put 20 colonies on their solar site. They get a tax write-off. I get paid to just put my bees there. So since that was part of the deal, it was worth it for me to drive across town to be able to do that. So 20 colonies, that'll be a day for me, right? Managing those colonies out there, it'll be worth it. But most of my colonies are 10 to 15 minutes within the range of my house.
That's quite reasonable, I would say. Yeah.
And you've got a couple of bee yards as well. What's your range like?
I'm pretty lucky because I live in the middle of nowhere. I don't live in suburbia.
Right.
Like I'm, 10 minutes from the nearest downtown or 15 minutes, and even probably 8 or 10 minutes from a gas station. So I'm pretty remote, and I've got my house plus 3 more yards, and they're all about equidistant apart, about 10 minutes apart from me and from my house. So
Okay.
it's kind of like a triangle almost. And so they're all pretty reasonable, and it makes it easy to go through all of them in the same day.
You drive yourself?
Yeah, I got my license a couple of years ago, so thankfully I've been able to drive myself, and I bought my own car from partially using the bee money last summer. So
Nice.
it's been a big help for me.
So Rainier, is that your goal? Are you working towards a business? Is this a future for you? Tell us about like what your plans are.
Yeah, so I hope to make beekeeping my full-time job. I got about 18 now. My goal's maybe 40 by the end of the year.
Okay.
And there's a beekeeping company about 45 minutes or an hour north of me, and they have 6,000 hives, and they go to Georgia during the winter time. And so meeting with the owner to try to work out if I can work there this summer and then in March. and we can figure that out. And hopefully, I'll get to work there full time. I don't know how long. In my head, I don't want to grow. I'm not Seth Hill. I'm not going to grow from 8 to 80 in 1 year, or do any crazy growth. But over time, I want to slowly build out to what I would assume would be around 200, 250 colonies. So,
And are you a senior in high school now?
I'm a senior in high school. Yeah.
Okay.
I started beekeeping when I was in 6th grade, though.
How did that come to be?
Yeah, that's a good question. I grew up on my grandparents' farm for a lot of my childhood.
Okay.
And so I was always involved with agriculture. I was obsessed with chickens. And so bees were, of course, the natural progression to that. My mom was like, "Do you want to go to bee class?" And she knew I'd love it. And she was obviously very right about that. So I never looked back.
So do your parents or grandparents keep bees with you, or is it all you now?
So the first year I did pretty much all the inspections with my mom, but ever since then she's been in occupational therapy school and starting to work more. So ever
Yeah.
since that second year, I've been doing it mostly on my own. I have a friend that lives about 8 minutes down the road from me, so we've done a fair amount of beekeeping, especially before I got my wheels.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then as the senior in high school, is college a possible route for you too?
I mean, I could go to school. There are plenty of places around, but there's nothing specific that I want to study. So I'd
Gotcha.
rather work now and go back later if I have something that I'm really passionate about.
Yeah. Well, you brought up Seth Hill and, knowing a
Yeah.
little bit about his story, he was going to college, the whole COVID thing
Yeah.
happened, it kind of hit the wall. He went full time, but what
Yeah.
an amazing education that guy has gotten
Yeah.
from his work experience beyond any college class learning he's going to
Yeah.
get is that experience he gets with Bob Binney. I
Yeah.
will say though, if this is a path you're going to take, having some business skills
Yeah.
might be a good good skills to build as you're growing. I was a teacher for 20 years. I've never been a business person. So as I
Yeah.
transitioned from that to being a small business owner, those were my largest struggles of not having the business skills to know what to do there. And
Yeah.
I think those are skills that you can apply in many places of your life, whether it's beekeeping or something else. You can open any business you want, any passion at any point in your life. So I'm
Yeah.
not saying college is the right way to go. I think there's lots of great learning opportunities out there, and going with a commercial guy is a great way to
Yeah.
learn really, really fast. A lot of experience, but there's both types of learning that can be really valuable.
Yeah. I don't actually know. Like, I'm assuming you're speaking about business school or some kind of something adjacent to that.
Some sort of education,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. There are plenty of ag schools in New England, and my
Yeah.
mom's trying to petition me to get me to go to an ag school.
And I'm sure they have business-minded departments of how to run
Yeah.
it, like a agricultural-based business, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, you can be a good beekeeper, but that doesn't mean you can run a business. They're
Yeah.
2 different things. Being a good business
Different skill set.
person and a good beekeeper, you've gotta be able to put those 2 together, and that's really
Absolutely.
important.
So are you planning to grow? It sounds like it from what you just said.
We're mom and pop. It's just me and my wife. We're at
Yeah.
about 50. We'll grow a little bit just based on our situation. We'll probably be at around 60 to 75 at the end of the year. Many of them will be like mating nukes. I'm going to start kind of I've reared queens years prior, but I haven't been really serious about it. So this year I want to dial in a system. There you go, answering that question right now. So, doing spring splits has been part of my swarm management in the spring. I'll
Yeah.
do splits. I'll raise queens that way. I'll sell a couple of nukes, and that's how I expand. But it's been pretty natural, and it hasn't been really intentional. So I'm in a master beekeeping program. My project is going to be around selecting for VSH traits. So that's something I'm diving into this year. Want to
Mhm.
learn how to create a little breeding situation, make a yard or two, kind of practice doing that on a larger scale.
Do you have those yards where you're surrounding other yards, like the
That's
flood
one of
yards?
my limitations. I have a couple of yards that are fairly isolated
Yeah.
comparatively, and they're big enough where I can put enough there. But that's a That's a limiting factor that I have. For me this year, Rainier, the big learning goal is dialing in the calendar, doing this on Monday, pulling out queen cells on this day, and just rolling it through the entire system. I know how to do every individual part of that, but putting it together into a system and coordinating it, that's the part
Mhm.
I want to be able to do throughout the entire season. Not the
Yep.
most organized guy in the world, so
Yeah.
I can rear queens, but creating a program that's
Yep.
3 months long that I can keep rolling over, that's going to be my challenge this year.
So you'd be making queens like April through July. What's your plan?
Yeah, starting late April, again, weather depending. That's that part of the spring that you got to keep
Yep.
looking at the calendar. Your 10-day outlook could be great and it could be a great time to graft,
Yeah.
or it could be down into the 20s and you might want to hold off on it. So it
Yep.
really depends. And then, yeah, usually sometime around July will be my last round. And I use those Mike Palmer double, the support colonies, the 4/4
4,
kind of
6.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my first round of splits, I'll have 3 frames on each side. So 3 frames in a feeder, 3 frames in a
Yep.
feeder. That'll be my first round. They'll raise queens. I'll pull those queens, use them for something else, put ones back in there, and try to roll that through the entire season. Then my
Yep.
last round, I'll stack up another box so they have 8 frames going through the winter. That last round of my queens, they're my best production queens my following year as I'm working to make my honey.
Yep.
So I try to make that always having nukes, right? So my mating nukes become my nukes to overwinter, become
Yep.
my production colonies, which become what I use to make my mating nukes, which kind of cycles around. So
Yeah.
that Mike Palmer sustainable apiary video from the honey show, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. I've watched that probably 20 different times, and it's really driven how I work my bee yard, right?
Yep.
Not just how I manage a colony, but how I manage my apiary, all of the bees that I have. And that's really helped me grow quite a bit.
Yeah. We actually have a lot of similarities. I've done a lot of queen rearing in the past and selling queens and keeping on that cycle. And it'll be interesting to hear your challenges after the season, like what happened for you. But my biggest issue, which shouldn't be an issue talking to every other beekeeper, is I have trouble getting the queen cells accepted after the first round. So like once it's a mating nuke and it has a foraging force because they've been around for almost 3 weeks. I have
Yeah.
trouble getting that second queen accepted. And I talked to
Huh.
Jose, the California beekeeper. He's like, the only thing I can think of, he said, one, just feed them just a little trickle of syrup when you're
Yeah.
dropping in those cells. That could make all the difference. And he said the other part would be just make sure you're handling them as softly and carefully as you can. So I don't know if I'm going to be running mating nukes. It kind of depends on my working situation, but um, I've done a lot of that, and I try to requeen every hive every year, and so I have
Yeah.
all that really young stock going into the year. And as I get bigger, I won't be able to do every year, so I'll be doing something similar to you, where I'm getting 30% of my queens requeened every year, or something like that.
So when he says handle them carefully, is he talking about the bees or the queen cell?
It's queen cell,
Okay.
yeah, queen
Okay.
cell.
Hmm.
Yep.
Are you using those mini mating nukes at all?
No, I'm using 5 and 3 framers.
Yeah. I
So
like to raise queens on deep frames as well.
yeah,
I
yeah,
like to give them the space to start laying once they get mated. And then it's got that transferability to other things. You can make it a nuke to sell, it can become a production colony. I don't think I'm ever going to get big enough where I'm going to have to scale down my mating nuke size to that
yeah,
small mini nuke size.
yep,
I really like raising queens on a deep size frame.
yep. Here's a comment from DC's Bees I wanted to address here. You said second and third year queens should be the strongest years. I think what Bob always says is that their strongest is 6 months after they've been laying, which I kind of have. I wish I'd asked them this at the Bee Expo, but I don't know how that would work with like my queens. If I rear a queen in July, she starts laying at the 1st of August, and then she lays for 3 months till she shuts down brood rearing in October, and then she starts again, let's say in February. does that mean her best month's going to be in May? Because that's when the 6 month mark. So I'd be curious to ask him a little bit more specifically. But I think what DC said or what Bob said is that it takes them some time, but that second spring, first spring, I guess, after one winter, that's their most productive time. What is that what you found?
And I think it's that solstice for me, which is part of that kind of dividing line. You know, if you get a queen at the beginning of the season, she's laying that entire season, including that time before the solstice where she's ramping that colony up. She's made it after the solstice. That's the time where their population is declining.
Yeah.
So the strain on her laying eggs in that second half of the year is a lot less than the first half. So I think that is a pretty big factor as well. And honestly, it really depends on the queen, how well she got mated, that kind of thing. There can be a third-year queen that's still rocking, or a first-year queen that's already petered out. So
there's a lot of variance.
Yeah, exactly.
Certainly. Roy here. I've got 10 of the double nukes by Palmer. It's amazing how fast they get away from you.
It's true. They certainly can. And I've only had one colony starve itself out in the spring, and it was in one of these, just because it was like I was peeking at the top. I was pulling off the top cover, and it looked like they had food. And so quickly they ran out of food. So that taught me to move them to an 8-frame box. I do 8 frames mostly, not 10 frames. But that taught me to, like, when it gets warm enough, move them to an 8-frame box so I can look at all 8 frames pulling off the lid in the spring, as opposed to just seeing the top box. But yeah, they can be a lot of fun. You can get a lot of comb out of them. I love throwing swarms in them because swarms are just made for making comb, and that vertical configuration, they just go right to town in them. So they're super nice that way.
Yeah. Have you I actually have never caught a swarm. Have you caught a lot of swarms, like, in recent years?
Yeah, I actually built most of my apiary around swarm collecting. The Colorado State Beekeeping Association has a great swarm catching hotline. So it's like a dispatcher network kind of thing. So anyone sees a swarm in their backyard, they can call this number, and it gets sent to, like, the head dispatcher, who sends it out to an area dispatcher. That area dispatcher sends it out to someone like me. So usually it's like 10 to 15 swarms a year. At this point, I don't even call into my swarm hotline because so many people are calling me from years past. You know, oh, you caught a swarm last year. Will you come and get one this year? You know, Rainier, we benefit from being in this huge metro area. We have a lot of people here, which means we have a lot of beekeepers here, which means we have a lot of swarms here. So it really benefits people like me who have the skill set to be able to do that. Now I'm getting older. I don't want to climb trees and roofs and everything, so I have my limit. So if it's usually above 25 feet, I don't want anything to do with it. But it's fun. It's like fishing. It's like fishing for bees, and sometimes they're super predictable and sometimes they're not. I've had times where you saw that picture of the swarm that I caught that I sent to you. That was one of the bigger swarms that I had caught.
Looked like it.
Yeah, that was a big one. I've had swarms that were like on a bush, like 2 feet high. I pull up to the street. I go and I look at it. I'm like, oh, that'll be super easy. I'm walking back to the truck to get my box. I hear them take off. I missed it by 5 minutes. I was like, dang. So that was definitely a tricky one. I had one that ended up having 3 virgin queens in it. So it was spread across a fence. It wasn't clustered like it normally would be, right? Around the queen. It was like spread on a fence that had ivy all on it. I ended up finding a queen, caged her, put her in the box, and most of the bees were ignoring her. So I'm like, what the heck is going on? That's when I ended up finding another queen, which most of the bees paid attention to. And then I found a third queen in there. So it's an interesting way to learn more about bee biology and how bees act around the queen and around that swarm impulse, but there's also a lot of unknowns as well. It's also a great way to teach people about bees, because people see swarms and they call and they want help, but they don't really know what's going on. I had this one family that had a bee tree in their front yard. They knew about it for years. They just thought they were their bees living in their tree. one day the bees swarm, and they call the swarm hotline going, "Help, Africanized bees are attacking our bees. Someone come and help us." So it's always great to go out and be like, no, that's not what's happening. Your bees are doing great. They're reproducing. They're so happy they're going to make another colony. So it's nice to be able to educate people about bees as well, because there are so many misconceptions out there.
Yeah. It's have you been? Yeah, I saw the chat too. Have you been able to do any cutouts yet? Have you been called for that?
That is not a skill set I have. I am not a construction person. That would be dangerous for someone like me to be cutting into a building. So I'm wise enough to stay away from that. It's also a lot of work, man.
Yeah, no, it takes many hours.
Yeah, so I've actually done one in my career. It was a tree that had fallen down that was in someone's front yard that had bees in it, and they wanted the bees out. So I cut it open with a chainsaw, and that cured my urge of doing any other cutouts ever again. Now, if it's someone's got a shed that's falling over, I might take a look at it, that kind of thing, but I don't know electricity. I don't know what's inside of a wall. So I'm gonna create more problems than solutions if you want me to cut into your wall. Have you done anything like that?
Like I said, I haven't even caught a swarm. No, I haven't done a cutout. Okay. We don't really have any cutouts. Aren't really like a thing that happen here, like almost ever. I mean, very rarely on occasion, but most of the time it's people posting like, "Can somebody remove these bees?" And then they're like yellow jackets or wasps.
Yep.
So it's most of the time we don't even have the opportunity to do so here.
Okay. Do you have a lot of beekeepers around you? You said you have that one large beekeeper.
Yeah, so we are hobbyist beekeeper central. We're in kind of like the socioeconomic class that have a lot of bees. I mean, we have a lot of people of that income that are just likely to have bees, and so we have tons of hobbyist beekeepers just everywhere. And some places it's can be very frustrating for people because of the mite bombs. Thankfully, I mean, I still have a fair amount of beekeepers, that I know within 10 minutes of me, but it's nothing like some other parts somewhat near me, maybe a half hour away. They're just constantly mite bombed from new beekeepers that just don't have enough experience to know what they're looking at yet. So
we definitely have to be aware of that as well. I caught a swarm one time, and this taught me to treat every swarm with oxalic. I go and I check on that swarm like 3 days later, and I see mites on a drone, like crawling all around the drone with my bare eye. I can see this. So I treated that colony, and they just had hundreds of mites. It was awful.
Huge drop.
It almost felt like the swarm was like a mite dump. It was almost like a survival mechanism that the mother colony was trying to perform by getting rid of so many. Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah. So that taught me to be more careful about the swarms that you bring into your apiary.
Yeah.
But we definitely have to be mindful of that. Here in the metro area, we have a lot of beekeepers of all different skill sets. So we have to make sure that we're mindful, especially in the fall, as those colonies are crashing, and you can definitely have a pretty high mite increase in your colonies.
Yeah. DC Gunline Bees. This dude from Flower Street seems to have his ducks in a row.
Hi, Tim and Hannah.
Well, I don't know Gunline. I think he might be kind of new. We might want to watch him though. I think he knows a few things about cream honey.
Yeah.
You were talking about how you're getting old. DC responds, says the youngin, "Bryan, you're just a fall chicken."
I don't feel like it anymore. I thought I was the cool teacher, but we'll see.
We'll see.
I'm 51. I'm not sure how. Like, if I was 20 years younger and starting this business, I'd have very different goals.
Yeah.
But because where we are in our life, what we have looking at our future, I've decided to keep our business really small. We do the market scene. We sell honey. Like they were saying, we do a lot of creamed honeys. We do a lot of products of the hive. Having a lot of colonies was never something I really aspired to, just because of the physical demand on your body. That's something I can't do anymore. So my goal was always to try to, like, how can I make a career at this point in my life out of as little colonies as possible.
Yeah. How do you maximize?
Yeah. How do I maximize my income out of the effort that I put into it? And we're at that spot where we're kind of close to not growing anymore. I've got enough wood and ware pretty much to do exactly what I need to do. I might invest in some mating nukes. I was thinking about those 6-frame license as like a mating nuke overwintering kind of system, dual purpose. But I'm pretty set there. I've got a lot of my honey supers. I do all in mediums. I've got a lot of comb drawn out right now. I'm at the point now where I've got enough comb where it's kind of increased my honey production dramatically. So every year I'm still adding foundations to my boxes as I'm adding those honey supers on, but it's like 1 or 2 per box. So I'm still getting great honey production while I'm gaining a couple of frames drawn out every year per colony. So we'll probably get to around 60, 70-ish. Last year we did one farmer's market, and we're transitioning to another one that sounds like a better one as far as the sales go. Like we did a Valentine's market the other weekend, and all the vendors were like, this one market is awesome. You have to do this one. So the market we did last year, we were happy with, but this one sounds like it's a whole lot better. So we're going to do that. It goes from the beginning of May till the end of October. And then we've got 1 or 2 other events that are rock star events. And then we'll see where we're at, and we'll do like the holiday events as well. So we do a lot of, market events, my wife and I sell nukes, I sell queens. I have 4 different customers that I manage their hives for. So those are annual contracts. So I have some nice different income bases spread across. It's nothing's one thing. So if I struggle with one thing in any particular part of the year or any year, I can always kind of supplement it with another part of our business.
Yeah. Yeah. It's have you ever looked into doing agritourism or no?
A little bit. Yeah. We do something called a beehive dive where we have people come out to our yard. We suit them up head to toe. I've had a couple of groups come out, so it was like a Whole Foods like employment group came out. So it was like 10, 15 people. They're okay. They're not my favorite thing to do.
Yeah. We have so many tourists here. So if I stay in this area, they call Maine vacation land for a reason. We have, infinite amount of tourists from June till September. And that could be something I could do and would be a consistent source of income no matter the year. So that would be the benefits to it.
Do you tap into that tourist population to sell your honey at all?
Yeah. So I haven't produced enough honey to like really have that much honey come the next June because I don't harvest till like mid-July. But even in that second half of the summer, I've sold, like at my grandparents' farm stand, I've sold, 40 or 50 jars in a month. And that's a, really small place, only does a couple $1,000s a day. So we definitely have a market for like a high quality artisan products, kind of, like the raw natural honey. Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. It's so I haven't seen a lot of your stuff about creaming. How like what kind of machine do you have and how long have you been doing it?
There you go. That's what I got.
Nice.
That's it's an 18-gallon Lyson bottling tank. So it's the water jacketed bottling tank. And this is the creamer on top. So I actually started, as we grew and we started getting more and more honey. First of all, when we started getting honey, we were like, yes, we have honey. We put honey in a jar and sell it. And that was huge success. And then you start getting buckets and buckets of honey. And then you're like, all right, now what are we going to do with it? So we started getting creative. Our honey crystallizes really quickly here in Colorado too. So because of that, we decided to work with that crystallization process and cream a lot of our honey. So I started with the 5-gallon bucket method. So I have a mortar drill. So it's a drill for mixing like cement, right? That's what I use for mixing my creamed honey. It's got the long screw drill bit that you can get on Better Bee, I think. and I'll make my seed. I'll grow my seed to a certain size. Then I'll put that seed in the 5-gallon bucket, add liquid honey into it, and then mix it in that bucket. And then like I'll do like a 3-gallon batch. Anything that got bigger than that, it was hard for me to really mix well with the mortar drill. So I would do about 3 gallons and then jar it down to the top of the gate, leaving like maybe a gallon left in the bucket. And then I would do it all over again. Just fill it again with liquid honey, mix it all together, and just do another batch of creamed honey. And then we got to the point where we started doing different flavors. So I had different buckets. Each one had a different bit, so I could leave the bit in there and go back and mix it several times a day. I wouldn't have to like pull the bit out, wash it, put it in the other one, mix it, pull it out, wash it. So I would just I have 3 different bits, 3 different buckets, and I would just mix them twice a day. That got old after a while, right? So the automation of this machine was really, really nice. So I'm basically doing the same thing in this, but on a smaller scale and with automation. So you can build your seed up, put it in there, add liquid honey into it. And this one, all you have to do is push the button and walk away. It goes on 15 minutes every hour on a 72-hour cycle. So 3 days later, it stops. So instead of me a couple times a day mixing it by hand, this is doing it automatically for me. So now I'm trying to, every time I spend money, Rainier, I'm trying to save time because that's my most valuable asset. It's only me and my wife, and she's got a full-time job. So if I can spend money to save time, that's money that's worth spending. So our most recent purchase, or one of them, was the Hilco Easy Bottler kind of thing. So that's going to make bottling honey go a whole lot faster. Now, I don't know how it's going to work for creamed honey. That's going to be the test. Will it move creamed honey through it? We'll find out. But that's been the hardest part about creamed honey now is bottling it, because it just takes forever to bottle.
So what was the price on the creamer DC's Bees? Just wondering.
I think altogether, you can buy them separately. Like here, it's the same bottling tank. That's just going to be for liquid. That's the one I got this year. You can buy it separately for this was $1,100. This was about $1,000. So I think together it was about $2,000.
It's not terrible. I mean, it's such a high price product that you can make it back relatively quickly.
It pays for itself really quickly. That's exactly right. If you're running that much creamed honey through it, it's going to pay for itself really quickly, because these are value-added products.
Yeah. How do you bottle it once it's creamed in the tank?
Slowly. I was doing the 1-drip valve last year, and that took forever. And I wanted to switch it out and just put the regular metal valve in, but I couldn't because it was full of honey. So it's kind of hard to take the valve off when it's full of honey. So I've since got, and I haven't put them on yet, I don't know where they are, but I since got a shutoff valve that's going to go between the tank and whatever valve I'm using, so I can switch them out. But there's also, for the Easy Bottler, there's a connection piece that goes right into the valve. So I haven't used that part yet, but that's my next part. Like when I tried the Easy Fill, I did like the hose into the top of the bucket, and that worked well, but it was just kind of messy because you had honey all over the hose when you pulled it out. So the other system just goes right here. I think it's going to be much cleaner. Arius asks, how much does creamed honey go for? Well, honey sales vary from area to area. I'll say for my area, I get 50% more than my liquid honey for any of my specialty honeys. So that's like hot honey, any flavored honeys, any creamed honeys. So it is more work. It takes a lot of time to do that to the honey, but we do get that money back in that specialty product. And it's also the kind of thing where our business model is based on selling directly to the customer at the market. A lot of people don't know what creamed honey is, But because we're offering them tastes of it and we're teaching them about it, they often walk away with a jar of creamed honey. If it was sitting on a shelf in a store, they don't get that experience with us, and it's probably not going to sell as well as it does at the marketplace.
Yeah. It also saves some time. Like if you have to make it liquid for your customers, like I most of the time I liquefy it before I give it to the stores, then that's
Right.
also time on the back end, which if you turn it into, I'm blanking on the word.
Creamed honey, yeah.
Yeah, if you cream it, then you don't have that time on the back end. It's one and done.
And that's what we were doing our first year. And part of the solution to that is educating your customer about what exactly crystallization is.
Yeah.
But the fact is they want that liquid honey. So we were spending time trying to re-liquefy our honey before bringing it to the market. And we got to the point where I was like, I'm not fighting this anymore. I'm going to work with it. So we still have liquid honey, but now we're going to bring like 3 or 4 different creamed honeys to the market too. Now that can be a challenge in the summertime, because creamed honey is going to melt in the summertime. So you have to be careful about having it out on 90-degree weather. You have to have like a cooler or something like that. You have to be really mindful about what that hot temperature is going to do to your creamed honey.
Yep. Question from DC. You can run liquid through the cream bottler, can't you? As a bottler.
Yes, you can. It just goes, the creamed honey goes slow as you're bottling it, like super slow.
Yeah. How many hours would it take to do a couple jars?
Oh, it would take, gosh, maybe a half an hour to do a case of 20. It's a long time, man.
Yeah. DC here again. I thought Hilco sell an all-in-one creaming bottler tank with a water jacket. Is that the one you have, Bryan?
No, I don't think Hilco's is water jacketed. I think it's just a creamer. I'm not sure though. Mine is a Lyson and it is water jacketed. I have heard good things about the Hilco creamer though. I don't have one, but I do know a couple of guys who do, and they've this guy Carl in Pennsylvania. He has a Hilco and he has a Lyson, and he says he kind of likes the Hilco. He thinks the Hilco makes a smoother creamed honey than the Lyson.
Yep. You have DC's bees. Okay, maybe it was someone else.
Yeah. And then James asks about flavors. We do plain creamed honey. That's probably our most popular. We do cinnamon creamed honey. That's a classic as well. That one's pretty popular too. We do a cacao creamed honey. We do an espresso creamed honey, a blueberry creamed honey. We have like a cider days is one of our big events in the fall. It's kind of like our harvest festival for our town. So we do an apple pie creamed honey, kind of theme it out a little bit. We have a couple of others that we've just kind of tried as like test batches that we might throw into the mix.
Yep. Or whoops, wrong comment. Are you ever going to get to a video on the bottler? DC's bees is dying to see it. Just so you know.
Yeah, doing videos has been a goal of mine for years that has often gotten bumped down on the priority list because other things have gotten above it. Maybe you can help out with that, Rainier. What do you edit your videos on? I was watching your video today and I was look like you do some editing on your videos. How do you do that?
I use WeVideo. It's like, I don't know, $100 a year or something like that. And if I paid for the higher tier, I might be able to get more music. Otherwise, there's pretty few tracks, but it's just a simple editor. I make whatever cuts I need using the space bar. I stop it, split it. Then once it gets back to the interesting part, I split it again, delete it, and then move the files left. And that's what I've done for the editing.
So like when you go out to the bee yard, you're filming stuff on your phone?
Tripod with my phone.
Okay. So where does that footage go from your phone? Do you have like a hard drive that you save it or download it all down to?
So I'm too cheap for that. So I have it on my phone. I upload it to my Google Drive, like my free version of Google Drive, and then that goes right into WeVideo. Then from WeVideo, I export it to YouTube. then I change the thumbnail, title, everything, and then make it public.
So you're holding all your footage in Google Drive.
Yep, and my phone. Yeah.
And it doesn't fill up? Like your Google Drive isn't full?
I just delete the videos once I have them posted to YouTube.
Okay, so you're not keeping them long term.
No, if I've already posted the video, and all of it's saved in WeVideo anyways, all the footage. So.
Oh, okay. Huh. How did you find WeVideo? How did you decide on that editing tool?
I've been using it for school for many years. I've made like many videos for school. Yeah.
Gotcha. So that familiarity.
Yep.
Huh.
Here's
that's that place. I have ideas of videos I'd like to do, DC, but I kind of got to pay the bills. So when it comes down to going out to the bee yard to make sure my colonies don't swarm, or making that video, it always gets prioritized that way. So I think DC knows me well enough that I'm always happy to share what I know in formats like this. And it is a goal of mine, DC. I'm just time-wise, I'm not there yet. Thank you. I appreciate that, DC. But I'm also the kind of person that I don't like to do stuff poorly. So if I'm going to sit down and make videos, I want to learn how to edit them right. I don't want to press play and then press stop and then post. I want to make sure I put out a polished piece of footage that people will enjoy and get something out of. So once I have the gift of time, that will certainly be on the agenda.
Yep. Here's my brother again. What is the purpose of the water jacket? Is there any specific temperature you need to keep it at?
Yeah, the water jacket helps with the balanced heating. Some bottling tanks just have the heating element on the bottom of the tank, right? So imagine it not with a water jacketed and just a heating element on the bottom. Oops, I just pressed something. I can't see you anymore.
Oh, okay.
I got to figure out how to get you back. All right, here we go. The water jacket heats up the water equally around all of the honey. So instead of just heating up the honey on the bottom and hoping it circulates to create that even temperature, it's creating that even temperature for you. So that heating element's heating up the water that's surrounding the entire honey piece. So it's better for the honey, I think, and it's just a better job of doing what it's supposed to. It's probably more expensive because stainless steel equipment is definitely expensive. And those were the last things that I bought. Do you have an extractor, Rainier? Do you have any of that investment done?
I have a 4-frame deep. It can technically fit 12 mediums. It's not the highest quality extractor, and I'm hoping I'll be able to harvest my honey using the commercial warehouse instead of me doing it on my own. We'll see if I can make that happen.
Yeah.
But I've spent some money in it. It's just not really worth it to upgrade it at this point. And my honey yields aren't very good. So I only did like 190 pounds last year. Granted, it was one of the worst honey years in probably over 25 years is what I hear from some beekeepers. It depends on where you were. It's just so highly regional. I have someone that keeps bees 10 minutes from my house, and he has significantly better honey flows year in and year out, and we only live 10 minutes apart, probably like 6 miles maybe. And go ahead if you're gonna have a thought.
Yeah, what are some of your major nectar flows? I know blueberries up in Maine is a major crop. What are your major nectar flows?
So it turns out bees actually hate blueberries, even though we make them pollinate blueberries. It's a big monoculture. And so there's not enough native pollinators that are actually good at pollinating blueberries for them to all do it.
Gotcha.
Native pollinators use buzz pollination because they developed with the blueberry plant for probably millions, or if not more, years. And so they buzz at a certain frequency, and then the nectar and the pollen is easy for them to access. The bees go in there and they try to like smash and grab and rip it out of the blueberry flower, which is really small and pointing downwards. And so they can't actually really do much with the blueberries. They have like 4 times as many bees as they would technically need for each flower because they're so poor at actually pollinating them. But so we don't. One of my apiaries is in like a old blueberry field, like tiny blueberry field. But the bees never touch the blueberries actually. But our main flows, we get Depending on the year, we get a fair amount of nectar from the dandelions, maybe 4 or 5 frames in a really good year.
Okay.
And then our two main plants are bird's foot truffle. Um, it's like a small yellow flower, very invasive, but bees love it. Then we got
Okay.
the white Dutch clover. Um, Even though we're not in the glacial soil belt where white Dutch clover produces really well, it's still one of our best producers because we have incredibly acidic soil here. And so that's part of the reason why we don't really have a good honey production area, because typically basic soil produce more honey.
Hmm.
And we certainly do not. We have really acidic soil in Maine across the state. Um, so we got the white Dutch clover, the bird's foot truffle. Then we get any like kind of brambles, so blackberries, raspberries. They create a really nice little flow in June
Okay.
for a pretty short period of time, but they really just pull it in. This last year, even though it was raining, there's just tons and tons of bees, or tons of nectar in between the raindrops, and it was only 60 degrees, so I couldn't believe how much nectar they were finding. But then we got sumac is kind of like the tail end of the flow,
Okay.
and typically our flows in most years are over by like the 7th or 8th of July.
Hmm.
But we are really lucky in that we don't actually have a true dearth. We have pollen um, from when the bees start up all the way pretty much till they shut down in late September.
Okay.
Yep. What's your average honey yields?
It's hard to say because I've still been growing every single year. So I couldn't even tell you what my annual pull was
Yeah.
because I don't pull it all at the end of the year because we do the market scene.
Yep.
I'm like trying to get honey on the table in the beginning of the season as quickly as possible. So after my honey supers are on, I'll go back like 3 weeks later and I'll pull like the closest cap frames. Like I'll pull 2 frames from
Yep.
every box and then I'll start spinning that out. So last year, I think I did about 1,500 pounds. But
Yep.
again, I'm not even exactly sure. We
Yeah.
don't get a lot of honey. I would say, I run mostly 8 frames, and if I can get 3 medium supers filled off of a colony
Yep.
in a year, I'm happy with that.
So like 72 pounds ish. That'd be
Yeah,
a good
yeah,
harvest.
that'd be a good year for me, and that's an average, you know. And out of those 50 colonies, I try to run 35 of honey production colonies, and then
Yep.
15 are those like mating new kind of support colony kind of things. So I
Yep.
also use those for any problems I have with any of my other colonies. I'll just plug
Absolutely.
those right in because I need them to be production colonies, and that was one of my learning curves as
Yeah.
well. Like going to a business mindset when those colonies were just not picking up in the spring, instead of kind of helping them along and doing what the backyard beekeeper would do, I would just be like, nope, time's up. You get a new queen and just roll them through. And that's really helped me dial in my system as well, where
Yeah.
I'm not having to milk along these colonies that aren't going to do anything. Every once in a while, though, I'll pull an old queen and keep her in a nuke, and that's my market queen. That's the queen I bring to the market in my observation hive because
Gotcha.
she's old, right? I don't have to worry if anything happens to her. Those older queens, I think, are also less photosensitive. They don't mind the light as
Hmm.
much, so they find themselves on the frame more often than some of the younger queens who are hiding. Like there are parts of my observation hive, like the wood frame, they can hide behind, which so it's a
Yeah.
little darker there. So I think those older queens, they just hang out more, and it's great for the kids as
Hmm.
they're going by and looking for the queen in the observation hive.
Nice. Yeah. That's that's it. I mean, that's decent. I think that if we had a really good year, maybe I could average something close to that, 3 or 4 frames, um, or 3 or 4 supers.
Right.
But I've just done so much splitting over the years that never really given them a chance. And do you get any fall flow?
Nope. Nope, none at all.
None.
So it's not even worth it to try. Like anything we get is just a little trickle. That's for the bees. So
Yeah.
after my honey supers come off, which is usually mid to late July, last 2 weeks somewhere in there, they're done. So at that point, I'm looking for the temperature windows to start doing my mite treatments. Usually it's too hot though for all the products that I like to use. I like to use oxalic is something I use quite a bit, and thymol based products. So Apigard is usually my
Yep.
other go-to product, which is temperature sensitive, and August can be very tricky in that sense. So that's the tricky part of that mite treatment program that I've been dealing with. But this year, as I'm looking at that breeder queen situation, I'm looking to be testing my colonies with a little bit of mite pressure. So I'm going to be doing a little less mite treatment this year to kind of see what they can do on their own. So I have been doing the past couple of years the slow release oxalic Swedish sponges. I would put them on during the honey flow. This year I'm not going to do that at all. I'm just going to let them go and see what they do throughout the season. I think one of the benefits of the project that I'm going to be working on is it's going to force me to take monthly mite counts, which I haven't been very good at. But since it's part of my project and the data that I'm gathering, it's going to be that accountability piece that's going to force me to do that. So I think there have been times where, like when my honey supers go on, I'm not going into the brood chamber at all. Those 2 months are for them to make honey, and I'm not checking. I'm not checking for queen rightness. I'm not checking for anything down there. So I'm not doing any mite tests those 2 months. So this is going to help me, I think, get a little better at, if I do have a colony that's gaining population of mites earlier than I usually find out about it, I can still address that a little bit earlier. So I have ideas of like taking my best genetics and putting them in an isolation yards, taking all the ones that are high mite colonies and putting them in an out yard so they're not providing like unnatural pressure to the ones that might have VSH traits. That's what I'm trying to do, is kind of figure out how I can juggle the yards that I have for the needs that I have for my project.
Have you heard of Duck River Honey? Yeah,
I got the hat right there. Yep.
Nice. Yeah, he does exactly the same thing as what you're talking about. Where you move your mite problem colonies away from everyone else, and then you fill your drone flooding yards, or in case just the apiaries, your isolated apiaries with those well-tested bees. So are you using Harbo assays, UBO, or are you just doing monthly mite counts? What's your plan for that?
All three of those. That's all right. Yeah. So I got the UBO assay. That's going to be part of my project. So I actually have to write a grant to get more tests, because I want to do as many tests as possible. So I want to work with local clubs and local beekeepers and look for those rock star genetics in the Front Range area of Colorado here. And hopefully that'll lead into creating like a little breeding co-op, like all those guys are trying to do, like Ashby Miller's trying to do in his area, and James Lee is trying to do up in Michigan. That's what I kind of want to build here in the Colorado area. So my project is kind of step one, identifying some really cool genetics out there, because I know there's good genetics out there. There's people bringing in good genetics, as well as people bringing in just the usual package bees and nukes from California. So like you said, you got some Corey Stevens queens. Did you get virgins from him last year?
Yep.
How many did you get?
So I ordered 4, but since I was the proprietor of a huge package, like I think there was maybe 30 on the order or something like that, and then I distributed them, kind of like what we're doing in Michigan. He sent 2 extras in there, so I got to keep the 2 extras. So I introduced 6. I think one of them was laying worker, because it just took too much. I waited too long to introduce the virgin. So out of the 5 that I introduced, I think 5 were accepted, but 2 didn't come back from their mating flight. So I got 3, and then one of them passed away in a mite treatment. But the 2 that, from my video today those are massive colonies for February. I couldn't believe how big they were and how heavy they were, because I would assume there'd be a trade-off between population size and food, but that wasn't really the case.
Yeah, that is interesting. We'll see if that changes as they start brooding up, though, because they just started brooding up, and that's when they're going to start using all that sugar to generate that heat to protect their brood. I got a bunch of virgins from a guy in Tennessee who bought a breeder from Corey, so I got some virgins as well. I haven't really had a chance to evaluate them much, though. I did have some turnover with them, so I got 20 of them 14 mated successfully, and of those 14, I think 6 of them requeened almost immediately.
Was it
So
bad mating weather?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure the reason. The guy who sold them to me was like, yeah, I had the same problem. He wasn't sure of the reason. It's just one of those unknowns. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's bees for you.
Yeah, DC, I will be doing a video on the UBO for sure. As that's a part of my project, I do have to document it. I'll be showing you guys as I'm doing the Harbo assay. So as I went to the 2 different conferences in January, this was a lot of the learning goals that I had. I wanted to talk to all these people. I wanted to meet these people and kind of talk to, like, this is the project I want to do, and get some ideas and guidance and that kind of thing. So I'll definitely be working on all this kind of stuff for really the next couple of years, and this is just year 1 of it. So I'm excited.
How long is it planned to last?
The project?
Yeah, it's just like into the future.
Well, my master beekeeping project will just be 1 season, but hopefully that'll be a launching pad for a bigger program.
Yeah. Do you like, are there large commercial beekeepers within a couple hours of you, or is it?
You know, Colorado's got a really strange beekeeping community. It's pretty disjointed in the sense that there's the state association, but I think about 10 years, most of the commercial guys separated and started their own association. And that ran for a couple of years. And then, as I understand it now, it's not even very active. So when you go to the state meetings, there's a couple of big guys, but not very many. There are some bigger beekeepers in Colorado, but because of that kind of culture, I don't really know many of them. So I know a lot of small sideliner kind of people, some of the people who are like invested in the local clubs. I'm an officer for the state as well. So all those people who want to teach and run and help with the clubs, those are a lot of the people that I know. But most of the bigger beekeepers here in Colorado, they either keep to each other or keep to themselves.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, that's kind of interesting. In Maine, it's pretty well integrated, and we have a lot of club infrastructure, thankfully.
Yeah.
And a lot of the bigger beekeepers go to all the state meetings every year. So, you know, that's the positive. Well, I'm doing a lot of the same breeding stuff that I'm hoping that you're doing this year too. Actually, my computer is sitting on a UBO test kit right now. And I'm gonna, buy a pair of sharp forceps for the Harbo assay. So I'm incredibly excited about doing that this summer, and I'm definitely gonna make some videos about it too. So
yeah,
we'll have some overlap and stuff to talk about next fall or winter.
Absolutely. Will you be at the conference next year?
Hopefully. I was part of the staff this year, and hopefully I'll get the opportunity.
Oh, cool.
Again. Yeah.
Right on. What did you get out of being on the staff? How is that different than just being there as a kid?
So I was confirmed as a staff member, and then there was some extra spots in the program. So I applied, and they let me go in. And so, I just was part of organizing the event as well, and, kind of the behind the scenes stuff.
Did you help with the youth program or just general organization kind of things?
General organization, because I
Cool.
got in the day before and helped them, set up and all nice. There was a lot to do.
Yeah, a lot of moving of furniture kind of thing. Yeah. Right on.
Well, thanks for coming on, Brian. I had a great time talking to you, and
yeah, it was a lot of fun
to be here. Yeah.
It's great to meet you. Like at the conference, I got to meet you for like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
It's nice to have a real conversation.
Absolutely. Well, where can people find you, Brian?
I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I have a YouTube channel, like Dee says, without very many videos. So we're at Flower Street Farm Bees. You can see any of our content there. Yeah, that's right, DC. Rainier was the young muscle helping out. Absolutely. Yep. Well, appreciate it. I can't wait to see the things that you're going to do as you forward your beekeeping career, Rainier.
Thank you. I hope you have a great night. I hope everybody else has a great night.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Take care. Bye, guys.